So today I am very, very pleased to welcome Nesreen Ahmed. As the founder and CEO of Harbour Light Coaching LLC, professional certified coach, Nesreen Ahmed is a pioneer in the world of grief, loss, and change, and is committed to providing transformational coaching to clients around the world. Nesreen's coaching is focused on helping clients find peace after a loss, divorce, or illness. She supports them in addressing their mindset, overcoming the hurdles of grief, and completing what's unfinished. Nesreen holds the Professional Certified Coach (PCC) credential from the International Coaching Federation and earned a Master of Science degree in Communication from Walden University. Most recently, Nesreen became a certified positive intelligence coach and studied with renowned grief expert David Kessler to become a certified grief educator. Grief is challenging and messy. Nesreen can help. To learn more, please go to Nesreen's website at www.harbourlightcoaching.com. Thank you so much for being here today, Nesreen.
Thank you, Tessa, for having me. It's a
Oh,
pleasure.
very welcome. So Nesreen, can you tell us a bit about yourself and what led you to do what you do?
Absolutely. So I spent the majority of my early professional career working in entertainment. So I did a lot of work in theater. I worked my way up from off-Broadway and sort of national tours all the way to Broadway and worked backstage, but did film and television. And was very lucky and successful in my career, but also very dissatisfied. It did not feel aligned with how I wanted to spend my time, and I did not feel like it was really fulfilling in the way that I was looking for in terms of my work. I didn't really know what else to do. So I lived in New York for 10 plus years, and then I ended up moving over to California for a while just to kind of see what life was like. Did some theater and work out there, but during my time there, my sister passed away. So it was a very sudden loss. She was my older sister. I have two older sisters, so she was the middle sister. And she actually passed away in San Francisco, and I lived in the Bay Area. So I immediately was like, I cannot stay here. I do not want to live here anymore. Within a few months, I had moved back to New York and started working again in my old career. And probably about 3 or 4 months into starting to work again and trying to establish myself here and finding an apartment and sort of doing all the things, I realized that I was incredibly lost in terms of my grief. I had no idea how to handle losing my sister and the trauma that created within me. And then I also was like, I am on the wrong path. Like, I do not want to work in this career again. I do not want to live in the city again. This is not it. I don't know what else to do, but I know this is not it. I was very certain about that. And I started going to therapy and I'm doing support groups, and I did all kinds of things to try to address and heal from my grief. And it was all helpful to an extent. You know what I mean? But at some point I realized like the things I was doing wasn't really helping, but I figured out how to like compartmentalize it enough and just sort of make it through the day, Um, and at some point I was like, I definitely don't want to keep doing this. And so I ended up hiring a life coach because I heard about coaches out in San Francisco, but I never worked with one. Moved back to New York and I was like, let me just try it. I don't know what else to do. I've tried career counseling and stuff like that. Everything else that I tried to do for certifications. I'm an ESL certified ESL instructor from years and years ago, but nothing ever felt like it fit. And so I decided I'm going to hire a coach. I'm going to figure out what coaches do, and I'm going to have one help me figure out what I want to do. And it was amazing. Actually, the very first session, I remember meeting with my coach downtown Manhattan. Her name was Christine, beautiful woman. We're still in touch. And in the middle of that session, I was like, Christine, how do I start doing this? This is what I want to do. And so I ended up signing up for a year-long training program. It was mostly life and leadership coaching, had nothing to do with grief. And it wasn't until in the middle of that program I found out, a friend of mine had told me, I just met a grief coach recently. I know you're grieving. Do you want to talk to her? Took a while to move that forward because it was just, again, I had compartmentalized. I was moving forward. Things were going well enough. But I decided, yeah, I think I do. So I worked with her, and that for me was the turning point where I was like, oh, this is how to really truly do the grief work.
Yeah.
This is how to like go deep and do what I can do on my end
Yeah.
to not feel the guilt, to not live in regret, to not beat myself up. Day. You know, I actually messaged my sister, she messaged me back, and then I never responded. And so I owed her a message, and I felt really guilty about that. You know, I had some really good conversations with her, but our relationship had been rocky for a while. And so I felt really guilty about that. You know, there were a lot of things that still felt like they were plaguing me. And so to work through that with my coach felt amazing. Like I didn't anticipate that I could feel the level of at peace, you know, and the level, of course, I didn't, you know, I would love to have my sister back. I don't want to go through this, but if I have to, I felt like I found a way to be able to survive it, you know, and that was it. That was enough for me to say, as scary as it is, I think I want to go into grief coaching. This feels like it's the best way that I can help people. And so that's what I've done.
Excellent, excellent.
Yeah.
Um, so I know you've spoken about your sister, but you've also lost two children while
Mhm.
you were pregnant. So would you mind sharing that for people who are going through that?
Yeah, you know, I'm quite fortunate. I had my daughter, my first successful pregnancy. She was born in 2020, actually almost exactly 4 years ago. She was born
Yeah.
March 19,
Oh,
2020. So, and just she's just amazing, amazing. But I got pregnant again in 2021, and that did end in a miscarriage. Um, and at that point, I was like, okay, I know this happens. You know, I hadn't known at that point how prevalent it was, but almost every woman that I talked to was like, oh yeah, that happened to me.
mm,
Yes, I understand. You know, and they shared their story, allowed me to share mine. But you know, there was like. I tried not to, but I will say I did question, you know, my body, my health, my ability to have another child. You know, there were some concerns, and I felt a bit responsible, even though I know that it's
yeah,
natural. I know that it's not my fault. I felt somehow like my body should have been able to do what it needed to do, right? Um, and so yeah, so there was a bit of, you know, there was, but I also at that point I wasn't really ready to be pregnant again. You know, I just had my daughter a year prior, and so there in some ways it was like it's okay, I can move through this, I can move beyond this. But then we started trying again, and I got pregnant in 2022. And that was definitely like, oh, we're going to have a second child. This is it. Amazing. And that also ended in pregnancy loss. And that one
yeah,
still, you know,
yeah,
healing from that. The heartbreak, you know, the hopes, the expectations, the want, the desire, you know, the excitement. And to find out, um, you know, that it wasn't going to happen was really, really difficult. So
oh,
yeah.
bless you. Oh, thank you for sharing, Nesreen, because I know you would have helped lots of people just right then. Thank you so much. Um, so could you tell us what anticipatory loss is, please?
Absolutely. I actually work with a lot of people who don't realize that's what they're dealing with, but they do have the anticipatory grief, which is basically the knowledge or expectation that you know, a loss is coming, a change is coming. So a lot of people I work with, myself included, have parents who have dementia. Um, and just watching that person deteriorate, right? Watching the decline. Um, you know, I watched my mother over the years, you know, start with just like remembering or forgetting little things to then forgetting how to get home when she was driving to then, you know, at some point not even really being able to walk or talk, you know. So it's heartbreaking. It's really
Yeah,
heartbreaking. But the idea of anticipatory grief is that, oh, this is happening. Oh, this is coming. You know, I know that at some point the way things have been are going to end, right? So it doesn't necessarily mean that it will result in a death, but the knowledge and the foreboding of there's a change coming and it's going to be difficult, right? And so we talk a lot about how to deal with that. We talk about ways to take care of ourselves. We talk about ways to um, create new memories when possible, or cherish old memories, maybe create memory books. Like I have clients who sit with their parents and they create memory books and stories and pictures. And, they're basically trying to encapsulate as much as they can of their parents' lives and experiences. Um, Ways to navigate conversations about what happens when you die. Some people have, I actually just saw this recently where they have like a death box where it's basically like all of the passwords, all of the account numbers, all of the information. Here's what I want you to do with my remain, I mean, like having it all in one place. I have other people whose parents have created folders for them. Here's all the information you need to take care of us after we pass, whatever it is. And so navigating through some of those conversations when necessary. And also just how to have really meaningful conversations. One of the things that I tried to do as much as I could was to thank my mom. We had my mom was in many ways very challenged and had a difficult life. And, she did her best by us, but, wasn't always easy for her. And so I tried to really say, thank you. And I understand and I appreciate. And, I would share memories that she didn't remember necessarily. But early on enough that she could really engage and appreciate, the conversation. I really tried to express how much I loved her, how grateful I was for her, and to hear as much as she could share with me as well. So, there are ways to really say what needs to be said, and have those really meaningful conversations before it comes a point where maybe you can't.
Yeah.
So I try to help facilitate, or help encourage, I should say, my clients to have those kinds of conversations as well. Because I think nothing will like completely prepare us for the grief and how we're going to feel. And certainly nothing will like cure it, or help us avoid it completely, but hopefully help mitigate, some of the regret we might live with, some of the frustration of like, oh, I wish I had said this to that
Yeah.
person. And so, doing as much as we can beforehand, those are ways to, again, kind of help ease how we feel once the loss does happen.
Yeah. Because that could also be applied maybe to people who have cancer and the family know that, time is limited.
Absolutely. Yeah, any real loss of health, that's very common. And it's just very grief is very common during loss of health or health scares. So yeah, cancer, dementia, strokes, I mean, it really depends on the person and what they're dealing with. But yeah.
And that is such a good idea, Nesreen, about the death box. Because I think end of life doulas do that. They get all the passwords ready and everything ready because grief is stressful enough as it is. So if you could make it a bit not easier, that's the wrong word, but yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I think easier is the right word. I
Yeah.
mean, nothing's easy, but anything you do to help facilitate. Like I remember having to call about my sister's credit cards and be like, she died, she died. Like
Yeah.
how many times did I have to do that with different, accounts that she had and her pension and her, 401k and all I was just like, if I have to share this bit of information, if I have to say it out loud again, oh, you know what I mean? It was so challenging and so difficult. And I didn't want to talk about it. I didn't want to have to like go through all of the things and so and we were lucky in that like there wasn't a lot of like legal issues that we had to contend with, but I know a lot of people go to court, probate, I mean there's so many different things. The estate has to be settled, so anything you can do to help ease all of that, I think is definitely worthwhile.
Definitely. Thank you. So you became a certified grief educator and studied with David Kessler of all people. Can you tell us about that, please, and who he is if the audience don't know who he is, please?
Absolutely. So David Kessler, I would say, is one of the more well-known yeah, expert is that, or leading figures within the world of grief in the United States. He is a phenomenal man. He's been, working for 20 plus years in the world of grief. Worked with Dr. Kubler-Ross, for many years before she passed. So he's just a phenomenal person, a wealth of information and experience, and has worked in different settings all throughout his career. And recently, I think I was in the first cohort, and I think that was 2022. Yeah, 2022. I was in the first cohort of his grief educator program. Um, and basically, we met twice a week. So it was pretty intensive, but he really shared a lot of, different tools, strategies, and just shared a lot of information too about what to expect, different kinds of losses, different exercises to walk people through depending on where they are, what they're experiencing. And I found it to be so beneficial. The first meeting of the week was really a kind of a lecture with a Q&A, and then the second meeting was more of a lab where it was more interactive. You got to talk about your loss. If you were experiencing loss, you got to ask questions about working in the world of grief, and maybe how to navigate certain things with certain clients. So it was really, really helpful. I thought it was a very robust program, and yeah, very grateful to be able to work with him and get a little bit of his knowledge and insight.
Excellent, thank you. So you help people with their mindset and completing what's unfinished. What sort of things do you think might be unfinished?
Well, a good example is what I shared with you, where it was like my sister passed away and I had all these things that I wanted to say to her. I had all these things that I never got to say to her. And, I have a lot of clients who feel similarly, even if they've said the thing,
Mhm.
they said it once or twice to their person, they want to say it again, right? Or it's like, oh, I wish that like I could tell them or like really go deep into like that experience or that memory or that feeling, and what they brought to my life and, what they meant to me, and so, yeah, and some of it is, just the, I don't know, rigmarole, but like, getting all of the things done that they need to get done to settle the estate, to make sure that the will is uh, completed, or any steps that need to be taken. So sometimes it's just the logistics, but a lot of times it's more emotional, like I wasn't finished, I wasn't ready. I had a client whose father I think was 76 when he passed. She still didn't feel ready. She was like, he's had so much life left in him, he was too young, and I have clients who their parents passed in their 50s. I have a client right now whose parent passed in her 50s, and that was definitely too young, and so a lot of
Yeah.
people, I think, we feel like we're robbed of the time, we weren't ready to say
Mhm.
goodbye. And so, um, how do we work with that? How do we live with that? And so a lot of times I do talk to people about like what feels left to say, what feels like you want to apologize for. What are the things that happened in the relationship that you really regret and feel guilty about? What are the things that maybe they did that you want to forgive? And so really looking at the entirety of the relationship can be helpful, and sort of the major ups and downs, the major events that happen that might still be weighing on us. Um, yeah, I work, and then, with mindset, sometimes we fall into the like, I will never feel anything but this, especially um, in the early days of loss. It can feel so all-encompassing and overwhelming, and you kind of forget that there was a time where you didn't feel like this, and you can't imagine a time where you won't feel like this. And so it is about, okay, let's remember that today is today and tomorrow will be what it is. We'll find out. But, trying to take things one step at a time, trying to hold on to hope that we won't always feel how we do today. And try to move forward, however, whatever small step that looks like and whatever that means for that person, trying to move forward in some way.
Excellent, thank you, Liz. Um, so what are one of the main things that we can do when we kind of feel we just can't keep going?
Mm. Well, um, I mean, a couple of things come up. I try to take a holistic approach to coaching. And so I do look at like, what do you need right now? Is it rest? If you just can't, if you're just done, maybe you don't need to do all that you've been doing, right? Or maybe getting more help, if it's, if your work is really overwhelming, can you delegate some of the things in your personal life, right? Can you hire somebody for like, a short period of time to come clean your house or cook your meals, or can you order, from like, a meal delivery service, if you need help with the kids, do you have any neighbors, family, friends that can help ease your load? What I mean? Like, so how can we work within our energy levels, our ability to really care and give? But then also like, we have responsibilities. We have to be able to get up out of bed and do what we have to do. So how can we help ourselves get everything done, even if we're not doing it? Right. And so I think, grief is one of those things where we really need other people in our lives. We need a lot of support, and maybe more support than we're comfortable with. So I do talk to people about like how to get so much support that it's just like, this feels wrong. This feels uncomfortable. This just does, I shouldn't have as much support. It's like, yes, you should. Grief is a full-time job, right? Even when you don't feel it, your brain is processing, your brain is experiencing, your brain is remembering, your brain is going through, it's like, there's so much that's happening on a physical level when it comes to grief. So it is a full-time job in addition to the life that you lead, the work that you do, the family, the responsibilities, all the things that you have to do just to maintain a life, right? So yeah, I talk to people a lot about like what kinds of things can we do to help ease the load, but still have things be moving forward.
Excellent. And they might be surprised that neighbors and friends actually do want to help, and maybe they don't know how to help, but they do want to help.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, so many people are like, oh man, and I talk to people. I actually have a couple clients who come to me and say, so and so is grieving. I don't know what to do. My employee, I have a direct report. He's grieving. What do I say? And so some of it is just about educating people. Like, how do you handle grief, or approach grief, have that conversation with somebody in a meaningful way, right? Avoiding sort of the cliches and the maybe less helpful things. But a lot of people don't know how to approach it. They're afraid to upset you. They're afraid to insult you. They're afraid, if you seem okay, then you must be okay,
Mm.
right? So they don't want to disrupt that. So it's hard to know exactly the right way. But if you, as the griever, say, I need help, and here's what I can't even make dinner tonight. It's like, okay, I got you. I will order. Do you eat this? I got, it's like people really do want to, they care and they do really want to help. But a lot of times you're right, they just don't know how.
Yeah. And why do you think it's so hard for people to speak about grief?
I think it's a combination of things. One, I think we are not grief literate. I think in the UK probably maybe more so.
No,
I don't know.
no more grief
But
literate.
I know emotions are not always welcome in the public space, in the UK, but here in America too, it's like we don't know what to say. It's like, oh, time heals all. Oh, you're strong, you'll get through. It's like, no, like those are really insulting and untrue things to say, and so yeah, so I don't think we're literate. I don't think we really know how to approach it. I think we're afraid of vulnerability, or we're afraid of hurting somebody or insulting them, but we're also afraid of like maybe they're super, like maybe the floodgates will open and then suddenly I have to comfort them and I don't know what to do. I mean, like so there's a lot of different, I think, issues that go into like how do we interact with somebody who's grieving, and what do we do if we've made them too upset and then we feel bad, or it's overwhelming and we don't know what to do with all that emotion, so I think, yeah, I think there's a lot of training that needs to happen, education that needs to happen to help inform people of things to say, what to avoid saying, why this is insensitive. But then I also think a lot of people, they get scared. Death is scary. A lot of times when we go through grief, we think about our own mortality. What's going to happen to me? How will I go? When? What are the circumstances of that? What happens to my loved ones, my children? And we think about our own grief, the people that we've lost, the hurt that we've experienced. So we don't want to think about that. It's easier to push it away, or we've dealt with it enough and we don't want to feel it now, right now. And so I think there's a lot of different layers and different reasons why it's hard to really connect with somebody when they're grieving. But I always tell people, be honest. Like, if you don't know what to say that. I don't
Yeah.
know what to say to you. I love you. I care about you. I'm here for you. I'm terrified of upsetting you or saying the wrong thing, but I want you to know I'm here. Right? That opens the door to so much. But then also, being willing to do things, being willing to listen. So we don't listen well in our society. And I think giving people the space to feel exactly how they feel without trying to change it and without trying to fix it is probably one of the best gifts. One of the best gifts, because then that person doesn't have to pretend they're okay. If they're sad, they're going to be sad. If they need to cry, they can cry, and they have a safe space to do that. Right. And that's the most important thing. It's like when you feel super vulnerable, don't you just want to be in a place where you can express it without judgment, without concern, without any sort of ramifications? It's just like I can just be exactly how I am in this moment, right? And that's pretty rare. I think that is a true gift that we can give grievers.
Okay, excellent, lovely. And so looking back on your life, Nesreen, with everything you've learned so far, what's one thing do you think you can share to help our audience?
Um, I think it's the two things I probably already said, or I definitely said, but one, know that you won't always feel this way, right? With time, but with effort, with the work that you're doing, with the healing that you can do, how you feel will change. Your grief will change. You won't always feel how you feel today. And then get lots of help, right? We heal, as David says, we heal in community, right? We heal with others. Our grief needs to be witnessed. And while, yes, you can muscle and push through and not have to burden anybody and not have to, like, worry if people are going to say the wrong thing. Yes, you can do it alone, but why? Why? Right? We're social creatures. We want each other. We need each other. We want that sense of belonging and to be heard and to be seen, to be validated. And so find those people, whether you have to hire them, whether you have to search for them. Maybe they're in your immediate circle, maybe they're not, but get the help, get the support, find the community. I think you'll find that ultimately it helps you heal in ways that you maybe don't expect.
Oh, wonderful. And can you tell us about your free gift, please?
Yeah, so I created a grief assessment a few years ago. This was something that was near and dear to my heart because I um, spent years, going to therapy after my sister passed away, and it was just not helpful. I'd go in and I'd feel awful, and then I'd leave and I'd feel awful. And she's a great therapist, but just not trained in grief. And then I went to support groups, and that also was helpful in a way, but not quite what I needed. And so I wanted to give people a tool to help them understand what kind of grief support would actually be supportive for them today, right? Depending on where they are, depending on, what they're experiencing. So I created the assessment. It basically helps you understand the difference between grief coaching, grief counseling, and then grief therapy. And so take the assessment, you'll get a PDF and a couple of follow-up, excuse me, a couple of follow-up emails just to give you a sense of like, here's what to look for if you're going to talk to a coach, here's what to look for in a counselor, here's what to look for in a therapist. And that's really it, so it's not like all these, crazy amounts of emails and anything like that, but it just gives you a better sense of like, oh, I should talk to somebody who specializes in therapy, in grief therapy, right? What does that look like? Where can I find these people? How do I know if they have any real training and expertise in grief, or are they just sort of a general talk therapist? Same thing for a counselor. When do I see a counselor? When is that helpful? And so on. So yeah, I really wanted to share that with people to help them ease the burden of trying to get help, because I know it's such a high bar sometimes. It's so hard to just reach out and be like, I need help, and then to find that person that actually can help you, and then to find the person within the kind of framework of people. It's so many different steps, and so I wanted to try to make it a little easier for people.
Yeah, that is such a great gift, Nesreen. Honestly, that is such a great gift. Oh, yeah, thank you for that.
I'm so
Thank you.
glad. I'm
And
so glad.
where can people find you?
Best way to reach out is just my website, harborlightcoaching.com. There's a form that people can fill out. I try my best to get back to them as soon as possible. But there's a lot of free resources and tools and information. I have a blog, a media, with all different kinds of podcasts and articles and stuff like that. So, very, very glad to be able to support people, even if it's just like them visiting the website and getting some additional information.
Excellent. So, Nesreen, thank you so much for being with us today.
Such a
And
pleasure.
it's great to meet you.
Likewise. Thank you so much.
Yeah.